Welcome to another episode of the Cortex Labs Nootropics Show. Man, this is going to be a good one. I am answering the request of people to basically pick apart this Vice article that is called "I Tested the Internet's 5 Favorite Nootropics," and here's what I got. I first want to start off by prefacing that one of the biggest mistakes the press makes, or really people believing the press, is, and particularly around nootropics, is they will send somebody to do some sort of very baseless level of research, very shallow, very insufficient quantity of research on nootropics. Then they'll go out and take nootropics totally in the wrong dose without necessary cofactors, like what you might consider nootropics 101, taking a choline source with Aniracetam, which this guy doesn't even discuss in this article. And then they run into side effects and then they write about it. And the end result is normally a hit piece on nootropics. This isn't the first time this has happened. The BBC wrote an article called, they did a subsequent video documentary called "My Smart Drugs Nightmare." Google it and watch the video of this kid who basically took modafinil way later in the day, didn't follow any normal directions, basically did it haphazardly, ran into sleep problems, focus issues, didn't feel right, etc., and then wrote a hit piece about it, right? Again, these are people not following Nootropics 101 instructions, taking haphazard doses, right? Believing that the dose ranges are, one thing or the other without proper experimentation, and then running into problems. Okay, so the article is called "I Tested the Internet's 5 Favorite Nootropics." And this is what he took. He took Aniracetam, Oxiracetam, Huperzine A, modafinil, and lion's mane. For the purposes of pointing out the logical fallacies in this article, we're just going to talk about his responses to Aniracetam, Oxiracetam, and modafinil. Number one of the things he tries to do as an undertone is he says things like suspiciously, he tries to make the contention that it's suspicious that a lot of these compounds were never FDA approved, like Aniracetam, Oxiracetam, etc. That is merely conjecture. I mean, look, they're not FDA approved. These are unscheduled in a lot of countries, but they're widely used across the world. But that is merely conjecture that the reason it was not approved was because it's unhealthy or there's some harm in it, or whatever. In fact, many studies prove the opposite, and that racetams particularly reverse amnesia induced by an amnesic component called scopolamine in rats, and identify it as neuroprotective as such, as well as other studies documenting that there isn't any modification of the elevation of liver enzymes when taking Aniracetam, particularly, which would indicate it's not liver toxic. And a lot of other acetams have been demonstrated as not being toxic whatsoever. Okay, so that's that. But the other thing that that he says in here, which I think is funny, is that he basically goes on to say, with Aniracetam, there's no clinical study suggesting that it helps with cognitive, functionality. And this is one of the things that people do. They actually literally think they can use scientific terminology. Some writer can use scientific terminology, and therefore he shuts down all other arguments against him. They use words like "there has been no evidence to suggest this," or "there have been no studies to there's no conclusive to suggest this," and that'll shut people down that are surface level thinkers. Oh, I guess that's it. That's the rule. That's it. But if you look further into it, you find that there are studies that, for a lot of racetams, there are studies for a lot of nootropic compounds that do demonstrate their efficacy. There are studies that demonstrate that very clearly that CDP choline helps people's dopaminergic restoration systems restore post-stroke. There's studies that combine uridine, DHA, choline source, and a B vitamin, upregulate neurogenesis, and really the list goes on in terms of studies in both rats and humans with certain nootropic compounds. But the major things I want to talk about is, okay, so let's start with Aniracetam. His Aniracetam dose was 1,500 milligrams spread out in 3 increments. He took 500 milligrams, 500 milligrams, 500 milligrams of Aniracetam. And he basically went on to say that it made him felt like he was on speed. He couldn't concentrate, he couldn't function, he couldn't process. His brain wasn't working well, but he was chatty and felt without limitations, but he was basically on speed and couldn't actually concentrate. And what do you think the reason for that would be, right? See, this is what I'm having a problem with. He would then go say, okay, Aniracetam is not a good nootropic to take, right? Made me feel like I was on speed, couldn't focus. What really would happen is you took a haphazard dose. 1,500 milligrams is not the usual dose for Aniracetam. Nobody breaks down Aniracetam in 3 increments of 500 milligrams unless they've been taking it for a while and they realize that's a good dose for them. Typically, people start off at 500 to 700 milligrams. Okay, and the other part of it is they typically start out taking a choline source, because nowhere does he even mention here, actually he tries to make a vague reference that there's some mysterious way by which improving acetylcholine receptors improves memory, when we have studies that show that it increases the release of acetylcholine, Aniracetam and Oxiracetam particularly, in rat hippocampuses. Okay, there's the mechanism there, bro. There's the mechanism, Vice bro. But he doesn't talk about taking choline sources with any of the racetams. So he basically nilled his contention that aniracetam is a bad nootropic and you shouldn't take it right away. He took way too high of a dose, didn't even mention that the dose range is really 500 to 700 milligrams for people starting off, and did not mention CDP choline, alpha GPC, or choline bitartrate. All right, so that's aniracetam, and his contention was, his basically the tone at the end of aniracetam was it was a bad thing to take, okay? So his perspective on that is nilled because he took the wrong dose, didn't mention choline sources. Test number 2 is oxiracetam. Basically the same thing, and here's how much more crazy he gets with oxiracetam. His dose, you ready for this? His dose was 2,400 milligrams. 2.4 grams of oxiracetam. That is asinine. And then he goes on to say, oxiracetam ruined me. It was rushy like aniracetam, but I was entirely in my head. I felt thoroughly unmotivated, self-conscious, and generally unable to interact with people. Yeah, dude, what happens when you take 476 milligrams of caffeine? You fucking overdosed on it, dude. Where did he get this information? Where did he get the information that 2,400 milligrams was the average dose for oxiracetam? Totally nils his contention, totally nils the argument. The average dose is 500 to 1,000 milligrams, also taken with a choline source, which he did not take, nor did he mention, imply, or even remotely discuss, okay? Completely nil. This is what I mean. There's one word for this article, okay, and it's irresponsible. There's another word, and it's haphazard. And then there's also another word, and it's totally shallow and fucking ridiculous. We'll skip huperzine and move on to modafinil. Basically with modafinil, he actually said that he took 100 milligrams modafinil, which is, for a first-time user, that in my perspective, that's too high. You shouldn't take 100 milligrams modafinil. I'd start out with 30 to 75 and see where you're at. Work your way up in 20 milligram increments or so. Thereafter, 20 to 25 milligram increments to see what your sweet spot is. Don't take it late in the day because it's going to ruin your sleep. Because of some of its mechanisms, particularly working on improving the functionality of sleep-inhibiting peptides called orexin neurons. But there again, he didn't do the research to figure that out. He went and took modafinil, and he had said he felt some focus, had some focus improvements, could not retain information, so working memory deficit for modafinil, pretty strange, but not out of the realm of possibility. But then he said that he got some vertigo and nausea from taking modafinil. Again, not completely out of the realm of possibility for people taking modafinil, but again, the dose was 100 milligrams. You don't know when he took it, right? We don't know what he took it in combination with. Was he drinking caffeine? I bet he was. He's a writer. He doesn't say that. He doesn't say whether or not he was drinking coffee, but I bet he was. And some folks know combining modafinil with caffeine might be a bad idea if you're not taking 500 milligrams of L-theanine to calm things down. So, and that's basically it. The standout thing, that really says what they were trying to do here is oxiracetam ruined me, right? And the whole tone was like, oh, suspiciously, none of these are approved by the FDA, on and on and on and on and on and on. And the problem I have with this is obviously all the logical fallacies that we pointed out that are irrefutable. You didn't take a choline source, you're taking everything in the wrong doses, you had no idea what you were doing, this is irresponsible and haphazard. But the problem I truly have with it is that mindless people that follow Vice are going to watch it and go, oh, nootropics are bad. Oh, I guess I'm not going to take modafinil. They're going to Google around, and guess what? Vice has authority in Google, so people are going to find that. And they're going to come across this guy who made 5 to 10 baseless, shallow assertions, with no true experience or granularity in research behind them, right? Didn't even talk about choline sources, said that there was a mysterious mechanism behind how boosting acetylcholine or modulating receptors could improve brain performance, even though we fucking have a mechanism for that, and it's release of acetylcholine in the hippocampus. I can't even begin, I can't even, people say I can't even talk about it anymore. So that's it, that's my take on it. The thing is completely ridiculous. Trash that article. If you're reading it, if you've read it, if you're trying to get into nootropics, don't read that article, okay? That's somebody who has no idea what they're doing, super irresponsible, and was haphazard with doses, and had really was operating off of false information. 1,500 milligrams is not the average dose for aniracetam. 2,400 milligrams is not the average dose for oxiracetam. And goddamn it, it's Nootropics fucking 101 that you take a choline source, or at least you consider that these things put acetylcholine into use when you're taking racetams. Okay, so that has been my take on the ridiculous article called I Tested the Internet's 5 Favorite Nootropics by Vice. It demonstrates, again, the media's ineptitude around nootropics and understanding nootropics and their trigger-happy capacity to go out and write hit pieces on them. I am your host, Ryan Michael Bell. Thanks a lot for being with me. We'll talk to you next time. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for watching the video. Thanks for being with me. Ryan Michael Balla here. Check it out. These 4 are our powerful nootropic products. So start from the top. You're going to want to hear this. Number 1, the Cortex stack. That is our powerful pre-made stack. This is the stack you want to take if you want to get work done. Let me just be serious with you. I created that stack running a company 18 hours a day to get my brain to have massive verbal fluency, total motivation, right? Total overall mental fluidity, lots of mental energy, lots of drive to work. I mean, entrepreneurs need brain performance. We created that stack for people that really, really need brain performance and ain't messing around. The Cortex stack, get it at livecortex.com. You will love that stack. Those digital guides, we'll start from the Racetam guide. That guide is a digital stack list of some of the most highly effective brain state specific Racetam stacks on the planet. I mean, basically you're getting oxiracetam, piracetam, aniracetam, phenylpiracetam, coliracetam, faciracetam, nephiracetam, pramiracetam stacks, very powerful stacks of all those racetams laid out in that guide. The Noopep Pro stack list is a giant list of sublingual, oral, and nasal Noopep stacks. So we've got just myriads of lists of very specific, very surgical Noopep stacks that are highly effective, time-tested. I mean, you take one of those stacks, your brain turns on, you will thank me. That thing is digital too. These are all digital, downloaded at livecortex.com. And then lastly, Smarter, Better, Faster is a digital guide that teaches anybody that's within the 1 to 2 year range of taking nootropics, how to take nootropics, how to think about taking nootropics, how to use nootropics surgically to really get optimal brain performance, to totally dominate the realm of nootropics. It gives you very many stacks, my favorite stacks, everything from modafinil, caffeine, theanine protocols to aniracetam, microdosing protocols, to uridine, ALA, Alcar, choline stacks, to basically everything else in between. If you want the most powerful stacks on the planet, if you want my personal stacks and my personal philosophy on taking nootropics, get the Smarter, Better, Faster guide. Get all these guides. Get all of this good nootropic stuff at livecortex.com. We make elite level nootropic products for elite level nootropic players. Are you one of them? Let's find out. livecortex.com. Make it happen. Thanks for being with me.